Beats production.
The Tape Never Lies network coverage of the NFL Draft starts now.
For Lord Cars.
Hear ye. Man of the people.
You know it's Cars Keys. Let's get it started up. Give me the car keys. Lakeshore Drive. Blog boys drive away with our texts like car thieves. Breakdown, we study tape and thrive.
Analytical preparation, that's what Cars is given. Cars don't discriminate, teaching the men and women. Each and every week, bears nerd to get your focus. Never manipulating stats, lore, cars and hocus pocus. Cars Keys, they're never lost. Checking source, never gonna find a better scouting report. Cars going live with the smartest man, my bestie. Deciphering holes on the defense like Getsy. New show, uniforms, orange with the dark sea. Tape never lies, patrons, this is Cars
You know
Keys.
it's Cars Keys. Let's get it started up. Give me the car keys. Lakeshore Drive. Blog boys drive away with our texts like car thieves. Breakdown, we study tape and thrive. We gotta break down tape like detectives. No hot takes, just real football perspectives. The Bears nerd dropping science on his terms. TTNL giving Bears press like a perm. Other networks is off with the heads. Stats plus film equals football cred. Analysis like Data Ted tries to shred. McCaskey's letting me cake, we keep the 100 crew fed. Cars Keys, let's get it started up. Give me the car keys. Lakeshore Drive. Blog boys drive away with our texts like car thieves. Breakdown, we study tape and thrive. Lord Hines in his car, fill up a goblet. Lord Hines in his car, fill up a goblet.
We're back. Cars Keys, Season 1, Episode 22. It's the NFL Draft Edition. Can't fucking wait. You guys don't want to hear from me. Let's bring in this superstar. There he is. He's back and better than ever.
Well, that's a low bar. Better than ever is not like it's a massive upgrade. It's basically like 1/1000th of a second off my 40 time. That's about as
man,
good as it gets.
Cars, you and I have been doing this for a very long time, and it seems like we get to that 2-week out mark, and we're like, this is treacherous. That how are we ever going to make it 2 more weeks? And then you get to today, everybody wakes up early, and you're like, so I'm off until Tuesday. So, I'm in full blown draft mode, and you wake up earlier than you do for work because you're excited to get going, and you're like, how is it only 9 a.m.? How is it only 10:30? So the day is dragging, but it's draft day, man. It's been a crazy, crazy ride here at TTNL in terms of the draft and this team. And you really set the tone for it back in April of 2021 with the two-fisted pump, and the Bears are on the Bears have traded up. And who knows what's going to happen tonight, man. Everybody is all over the map on this, saying that it's going to be fireworks and nobody knows. And then Ian Kenyon sends out a tweet saying that he expects exactly the opposite, that it's all manipulation of the media. And he kind of thinks it's going to be kind of right in order of what everybody is assuming. So nobody really knows. And that's why we all love this day, man.
It's the hardest part about this is if you looked at last year's draft, I would say that maybe 5 or 6 of these guys would still go in the first round with the talent that you had last year.
Yep.
Or even the year prior. Like you're probably looking at Paris, Bryce, Will Anderson, Tyree and Carter are probably the only ones that would be locks. Maybe you could throw in the way that it's moved Gonzalez and Witherspoon. So maybe it's 7. But after that, most of these guys would just not be first rounders in other years. So it makes it super tricky.
It does. And just on its surface, when you say that, it sounds negative, but it's really not, because the guy that we're getting at 9 or 12 or 17, say if we trade down, isn't going to be that far off in some cases from the guy that we potentially might get at 53. I mean, depending on what.
Yeah. No,
what
you're
position.
Absolutely right.
Because I mean, I'm hearing that Emmanuel Forbes might be a mid-first rounder as the surprise. And I love the kid. I love the kid. I picked him in our fight night. Not a lot of people are turned off by the slight frame, but man, if you can take the football away, that is such a premium. And I think that there's going to be some bombshells tonight. I really do.
That's one of the ones that I have listed that we'll talk through here, because I think that might be a good place for us to start, Shane, is just kind of talk through some of these things that we would say. The biggest things to watch for tonight is when that first offensive lineman goes, expect the other 3 to go really quickly. There is a significant drop off once you get past Skoronski, Wright, Johnson, and Jones, that when one goes, you are going to see somebody freak the hell out and start to make moves. It's going to be crazy. To your point, I'm the most interested once we get to around that 15 to 30 range, because I expect there to be a DB and interior O-line run. And so I list up here Torrance, Avila, and Schmitz are most likely to me to go at the back third. And if you look at this, I love Avila. Torrance and those guys in a normal year should be mid-second round picks. Now you're talking about late first rounders.
I'm hearing a lot of talk here in New York that the New York Giants are
Schmitz heavy
all over Schmitz. Yeah. I even heard today that Jahmyr Gibbs may end up in New York, but may not be with the Giants. It may be with the Buffalo Bills. So hearing a lot of different things here in New York leading up to the draft. But I've heard the Schmitz nugget I dropped here a couple of weeks ago, and I'm hearing it more and more even today.
And if he goes, there's an outside shot that Tittman would go at the end as well in a trade up. So
and that was what they brought up, a guy like Bergeron sneaking in to the end of round 1.
Absolutely. Like there's going to be, and what's going to be fun is, and the kind of the reason I put it, we're going to hear the pundits say in moves like this was a reach. This was a reach. In this draft, once you get outside the top 5, there's absolutely no such thing as reach. Because the value just isn't there for, like, they might be a first round pick, but in a normal year, they might not go 10. That's a reach. But you know what? It's not, because there's everybody else that you would draft in that position, you would sit down and say is a reach.
Right.
Kind of our earlier conversation, Porter Jr., Forbes, Banks, Cam Smith, I all expect to go in the first round as well, on top of Gonzalez and Witherspoon. Again, when you hear about runs, DB is going to be another one of those ones. Most of these guys, to me, should be early second round picks in a normal year. But once panic sets off, it gets crazy. I had typed this up last night, so I was super happy when the rumor started to fly out this morning. But I only really see 2 people potentially moving in the top 10, and that's Arizona and Atlanta.
And I know there's a little bit of talk out there that Philly would be willing to. I've heard that Philly's top 2 targets are Will Anderson and Jalen Carter, and they would be willing to move for either if they could get within range. Now, they have limited assets beyond the second round, but when you're a roster like Philadelphia, I mean, You add Will Anderson to this team, and it's just, man, it almost seems unfair for a talent to like that to go there. So I do like Lance Zierlein is a guy that's pretty good. He's got some takes that I don't agree with, but he has actually in his last mock, he has Philadelphia jumping Chicago, swapping with Atlanta, throwing Atlanta a pick, takes Jalen Carter one pick ahead of Chicago. Atlanta drops back to number 10, and they take Bijan Robinson. So that it's good business if you're Atlanta, if Bijan is your guy, because you're probably not going to worry about Chicago taking him at 9, obviously.
Yep.
And you're getting another asset just to drop back 2 spots and still get your guy. So, man,
which I still think is a bad draft pick for Atlanta, because I kind of sit down and say they were bad, but their division was so bad they kind of looked a little bit better.
Yep.
And both of those teams have misguided beliefs in their starting QBs. For whatever reason, it sees that Atlanta is full steam ahead on Desmond Ridder, and I, for the life of me,
can't figure that out.
Don't figure it out at all. But if you're Atlanta and that's the guy you want, Bijan, like you barely leveraged Pitts last year.
Yeah.
What are you doing? It makes no sense.
So, Cars, let me ask you this. We talked about this a little bit the other night, just in terms of, I mean, there's 2 things that I know it's not on the docket to talk about, but I think we absolutely have to talk about. We already brought up Bijan. There was the rumor out there that maybe Pittsburgh would be willing to come up for an offensive tackle or potentially a corner if one of them fell to number 9 with Chicago. So let's say that a deal like that is consummated, and whatever the Bears get back, it's going to be a second rounder plus whatever it is to move back to 17. You and I talked a little bit about this. Phil and I talked about it the other night. The running back position at number 17, it's got to be much more in play.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs, in all seriousness, would be in play at that position. I think both of them are the most gifted kind of three down guys that you'll find.
Yeah.
And so absolutely, when as strong as I normally am against running backs in the first round,
I'm right there with you, man. And I get it, but
their talent is so much better than any, like, even as a receiving target, to me, I would rather have Bijan or Gibbs over anyone after JSN, right? Like, that's just the way that it looks at this point.
You can line Bijan up in the slot.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, I still have a hard time watching him and see the way that he effortlessly is making catches downfield.
Oh yeah.
It's just it's a sight to behold. But I know there's going to be so many people. Listen, we understand value in the running back position, but the way that this draft is set up, guys, this is just like last year. Cars and I tried telling everybody that was locked in at wide receiver with those picks in the second round. Don't forget about cornerback. And if your number one priority is to provide for Justin Fields and you're at 17, and Bijan has to be a consideration because
his skill set is so different from the 2 guys that you have, like he is a true third down guy as well, right? He's not. Foreman is your first 2 down guy.
Yeah.
Herbert can do third down. We want his blocking to get better, but he's more of a stretch the field guy. Bijan is a combination of both of those, right? Like, so absolutely, that's a position that someone pointed out in the track. It's Elliott who said, it's like McCaffrey. Absolutely, that is a very good mock. This is a guy who could be one of those, 1,000-yard rusher and 700-yard receiver type guys. That's the skill set that he does. But it's, it's definitely in play.
Yeah, and when we say in play, that's not this isn't what we're hoping for. This isn't
No.
what we're saying that they're going to do, but it's got it when you're on the board at 17, if you consummate that trade, Bijan Robinson is 100% in the conversation. Has to be.
And I think when you just look at it, right? Like when you look at what Brees Hall started to do last year for the
Yeah.
Jets. Najee Harris hasn't necessarily been great, but ATN started to make some moves last year.
And none of them are in my
hold a
rankings
candle.
are even close.
And what Kenneth Walker did for the Seahawks. These guys, most of those guys, Brees and Kenneth, really great runners, don't do anything for you in the pass game.
Yep.
He's just that next level. But he's going to be one of those guys that's probably going to set a whole bunch of records for a team. Now it just matters of where he's going to go and does he win. If he goes to Atlanta, I feel bad for him because it's basically a waste of a career at that point.
Yeah, I hear you. And it's just people like, I think if the Bears pulled the trigger on that at 17, I know Twitter is going to melt down immediately. A lot of Bears media will melt down immediately, but it's going to be one of those things as soon as you get to game day and Bijan busts off a 58-yard touchdown. Nobody's going to give a shit.
It'll be like Forte against, his first game against the Colts. Like, man, look at him. He's so narrow. 64 yards. Love that guy from the moment that we drafted him. Well, he was my guy.
Yeah, and today is the day that we talk about, when we were going through the doldrums of this 10-game losing streak to end the season, and we're talking about wins. Now, does anybody want to go back and have that W in Atlanta? Do you want to add that back and then move off of what you just got, from Carolina on March 10th? These are the things that change so quickly, but it's going to be interesting, man. I know the rumor is Paris at number 3. I myself can't buy into it that it's going to happen. If it does, it does, and I'm 100% wrong. But man, I can't see it happening.
Me neither. And so I just don't know how you do it. And so the idea for what we're going to do today, Shane, is we're going to go a little bit more in depth as Jeremy is going to be really happy. There's going to be a lot of words on a PowerPoint slide. I'm going to do kind of the way that I see the top 9 picks going. And then we will do kind of like a 4-round little bit of a mock to get everybody through. But my goal today is when you start thinking about the draft, so many of us have been looking at this draft kind of from what we see other people mocking and what other people see their needs are. And sometimes it helps to really go back and re-examine the teams that are in front of us and the ways that they could go. And obviously all this is set to change, but it is, what I struggle with in the last week, Shane, is always, I've read way too many mock drafts. I've looked at it too many times through somebody else's eyes, and not that my eyes are better, but I want to see and look at it from the way of okay, does this make sense to me? What would I do what would I want if I were a fan of this organization? And Ivan, we miss you. But
wait till you see Mr. Vargas tonight.
Oh boy, I'm terrified. But so with that, and we'll show it real quick, but we're going to start off real quick just talking about Carolina. So this is kind of going to be the flow where I define a core guy being what I would call almost like a plus. When you look at the solid guys lines, it doesn't necessarily mean that they can't get there, but so far there has been the consistency. Like Derek Brown has the ceiling, Aquanu has the ceiling as well. But and JC Horn, I think, is also moving up there as well. They're just not there yet. But when you look at Carolina, I think when you start looking at interdivision QBs, the NFC South is terrible. You got Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield, and Desmond Ridder as the quarterbacks that you're competing at. I don't think it's a stretch, Shane, and I don't know that you would necessarily disagree. If you get Bryce Young in here, there's a really good chance Carolina could compete for the division championship.
100%, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, if he hits and he can listen, Bryce has everything you want as a quarterback in terms of ability. It's the stature that I am terrified of. Him, moving forward and staying healthy. But his anticipation, his accuracy, he's got more than enough arm strength. His movement, that is everything that you need. 100%, man. If you get him in here, and I mean, he's going to be the day one guy, and he's obviously an excellent quarterback. 100% in that hot mess of you just look at those quarterbacks in that division. 100% they can contend for their division.
But they have the worst playmakers of everybody. Yep. You've got Adam Thielen, who I enjoy and still think can put up numbers. And I think they're way overcompensating on DJ Chark. So they if you get Bryce Young, they have the best quarterback in the division, but probably the worst playmaking group of everybody. So when you look at that, and again, we'll go back to a mock here. That's the way that I look at them. Where do they need? They need everywhere. Their defense is really solid. Their offensive line is actually really solid as well. You saw that I listed 3 guys out there. It makes a really big difference. And to your point, Shane, if the Bears try to consummate this trade on March 17th instead of March 10th, DJ Moore is probably not coming.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Second up, we're going to talk a little bit about Houston. So Houston, and I probably messed this up a little bit, so I probably should have moved Kenyon Green down. But this is not a very talented roster either. And when you look at it, they have one of the bigger issues because you have to compete against Trevor Lawrence each and every year. And he is going to be the guy that has the best quarterback. And no matter who they draft here, whether it's Stroud, whether it's whoever, they're by default are going to have no higher than the second best quarterback in the division. I don't see Houston making the playoffs for 3+ years. Part of the reason they're the 4th oldest team in the NFL with a talent-ridden roster. That's not great.
Yeah, it's not good to be old and awful. Chicago was there at one point.
Oh, it's terrible. And so I look at them at being 3+ years out of contention. What they've done to that roster and the way they've churned through coaches and how they've done this, it's been brutal. Now, if you look at this draft haul, what they have here is impressive, is the amount of players that sit here and what they can do.
And on top of the 2 ones next year also.
Yes. So when you look at all of this, my biggest statement on them, if I were them, is I would absolutely go for the best player. I would absolutely go for Will Anderson because I would be in the tank for Caleb. If you can have a shot at Caleb, you have a legit shot at having the best quarterback in the division, and that is your reset button. If you go out here and you'll see in my mock what I have for them, and I think it's a mistake, but from what we keep hearing, it's very likely. It is, I don't know what the thought process is, but you're not going to be good for a long time the way the roster is right now.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the other options that they have, Cars, you show that draft haul that they have available to them. Let's say there is a quarterback that they are interested in. They've been connected to Stroud at one point. And I know Cody put this up here that Coleman. Listen, if you have CJ Stroud, fixated as your quarterback, and you're not going to take him because of the agent, you're doing it all wrong.
Yeah.
You're doing it. You can't let past negotiations come in to play with an agent if you have CJ Stroud marked as your franchise guy.
Because every team has had a bad negotiation with an agent.
Absolutely.
Agent. Yeah.
Absolutely. But their benefit, what they have with that draft haul, on my book, Will Anderson, best player in the draft. If you can get him at number 2, pull the trigger. You're at number 12. There's nothing saying that if CJ Stroud isn't your guy and he starts to maybe he starts to fall a little bit, or get out. Arizona wants out of number 3.
Desperate. They're desperate to get out.
You have the ammunition to get up there and have the second and the third pick in the draft, and you come away with Will Anderson and your quarterback if you have him graded high enough and have him marked as a franchise guy. Because Davis Mills, who's the other one that they have in Houston, the other quarterback? Well, that tells you everything you need to know. I mean, the fan base itself, you go into 2023 with a team led by Davis Mills, that's going to be a problem. But if they have one of these guys earmarked, maybe it's Levis, maybe it's Richardson, whoever it is, they easily have the ammunition to get back up there. They could have the second and third picks in the draft. Maybe that's the bombshell that nobody's talking about that we get tonight.
Absolutely.
Houston picking at 2 and 3. It could easily happen.
Absolutely. And it's something that you have to
Case
keep.
Keenum. You're right. That's who it is.
When we get next to Arizona, I have Kyler just simply because of the position and what he's paid.
What he's being paid, exactly.
Yeah. Zaven Collins finally really showed a lot last year for them. Buda Baker's there, but he wants out, so he won't be there much longer. When you look at below, the Trey McBride, Marquise Brown, these are all really third, fourth options. Isaiah Simmons has never really become the player that they had hoped when they drafted him. And James Conner is a nice to have running back, but that's it. When you look at the interdivision QBs, it is not a good look for those teams. Geno Smith today, I would say, is arguably the best quarterback in the NFC West, which is a weird statement to make.
Yeah.
But that's because Stafford's arm seems to be falling off right now, and not. So when you look at this, I expect them to be competing for the Rams for last place. The playoff outlook is probably 3+ years. Steve Keim, who ironically said that he would draft Kyler Murray over Bosa again because Murray got him extended and Bosa would get him fired.
Yeah, says everything you need to know.
Yeah. News alert. Guess what? Murray got you fired.
Right.
They've got a decent amount of picks this year. OT is their biggest need. I mean, I understand your point, Shane. Like, I wouldn't draft one there. But when you started Kelvin Beachum at 33,
I get it. Yeah,
Rashad Coward and DJ Humphries as your other tackles is bad.
Yeah, I get it. My just overriding theme with that, I just can't pass who I have as the best player. To me, Will Anderson, if he doesn't go out and get you 18.5 sacks, doesn't mean that he's not a fabulous player. I mean, he may be a better run defender than pass rusher at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. He could be, I think Chase Young is a great example, right, of a guy that you expected to do a whole lot more, and they've never developed. That absolutely could be him.
But I can't take the swing of a Paris Johnson when I have Will Anderson staring me. I feel like I can figure out the offensive tackle in this draft. I mean, they have 33. Chicago would love to be at 33 right now to potentially get an offensive lineman or somebody that could help out on the line. I can't pass Will Anderson for Paris Johnson Jr. if I'm Arizona. They brought in a first-time coach, defensive head coach,
who looks
first time.
Lost.
Oh, and it's hard to watch, Cars. I mean, I think that team is in a tailspin.
Him and the next two picks, like anytime you watch the two Eagle coordinator guys talk, you don't get a whole lot of self-confidence from what they're doing, which is super fascinating. We look at pick 4, right? Indianapolis is another one whose team is really barren. Outside of Nelson and Leonard, if he's healthy again and able to play it the way that he was, and Taylor, you don't really have a lot. And again, if you remember back, interdivision QBs are terrible. I really look at Indy being the team that competes with the Texans for last place, and I really think that they're 3+ years out. if you ask me what they do well today, it's run the ball.
Yeah.
If you ask me what they struggle with, it is everything else. Literally everything else. You're looking at the needs. My biggest statement for them is I think they're going to screw this up, and I think you're going to.
So do I.
I think you're going to have a massive reset at the end, because even if they draft a quarterback, they don't have the line to protect him. They don't have, Pierce looked pretty solid. Pittman is pretty solid, but there's nothing there that makes you do this. The whole way this offseason has been run, if you are their general manager, I don't know why you're sitting there saying anything. And
well, that's the thing. And they were reporting yesterday on Sirius, they've turned down trade offers for Buckner. They've turned down trade offers for Kenny Moore. And to me, Buckner's got 1 year left on his deal, correct?
Which is why I don't have him as a core player, because
right.
He's got 1 year left and he's 29. Otherwise, absolutely, I would be. But I don't understand.
But why are you turning those offers? Unless somebody trying to send you a 5th round pick for DeForest Buckner, I get it. But there's teams out there that would give you something for a guy like DeForest Buckner if they feel like they're a player away, from the Super Bowl. And that just, it doesn't seem like they really have a direction.
Their direction right now is Ryan Pace delusion, right?
Yeah.
Like, if we just get the quarterback, we're back competing. No, your drafts have been terrible. You just aren't adding the impact guys like you should, and so much of that should be on Ballard. Ballard, to me, shouldn't be here. He should be fired. He should have quit when basically Irsay forced all this stuff on him. But he's the
most overhyped general manager in all of football each and every year. And tonight, when they come out and say they got the quarterback that they would have taken at number 1, which will happen, the media is going to bow down to him and say, all you're going to hear is that Ballard preached patience, and I don't feel like we have to give up the farm. We can get our guy at 4. You're going to hear that, but go ahead. Go ahead and take Anthony Richardson. Go ahead and take Will Levis, and you're going to be playing golf with Steve Keim pretty soon.
But don't worry, because the quarterback didn't get you fired.
Yeah.
When you look at the Seahawks, the next 2 picks are really the fun area, because I understand I should probably have Geno here as well as a solid guy. But when you look at kind of what this is doing, they really did well last year adding Cross and Abe Lucas to the line. The line made massive improvements. I do still think that they should be competing for a division title, because I don't have a whole lot of faith in Purdy being able to do it for an entire season. So I do feel like this is a time that they could make some runs. I do think if Geno plays, and I'm not saying he's got to complete 70% of his passes, but if he plays with the confidence and makes the big plays that he did last year, I really think that this should be a playoff team. When you look at their needs, it's really pass rush has been their biggest flaw of anything. Interior offensive line is an issue, but pass rush is it. And so that's why I make this crazy statement. I know it's so out of character that Seattle will draft the best pass rusher that it is.
Yeah, and if I know this guy has been all over the map as a quarterback in terms of where he's going. But would you be shocked at all if they went pass rusher at 5 and then they're the team that took Hendon Hooker in the first round at 20?
No, but I kind of alluded to, I see CJ Stroud as a guy who could make a fall. Could be a fall. I honestly think he would be in play at 18 for Seattle. If
you think he's going to fall that far? Really?
I have no idea. Once those reports
I'll be honest, if I'm Seattle and CJ Stroud was there at 5, I'm turning that fucking card in.
Yeah, Geno would not make me stop, but I don't think it seems like it's kind of like Detroit. The next team is the same way. If CJ Stroud is there and I'm Detroit, I'm turning in that card, because Jared Goff
totally agree.
It plays like shit on the road, and so unless you're able to go get a home playoff run, he's going to cost you a game.
Even Vegas. I I mean, I'm not tying my.
I have no idea what Vegas is. They are the hardest team to read.
I think if they sit and I think that's going to be corner, or I've seen Paris Johnson. Not saying that I've heard anything, but I've had my gut has been telling me Paris Johnson going there to help out Jimmy G or whatever. But you look at their cornerback depth chart and it's awful.
It's
everything is awful.
dust. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you go back to the next team, right? Like you look at, the Detroit Lions. They are probably, in my opinion, as of right now, the favorite to win the NFC North for the first time. You look at guys like Kirby Joseph, what he did last year, arrows up. James Houston, who had a tremendous kind of second half of his rookie year, that arrow is moving up. They've got some youth. Jamison Williams is a big question to me. Like, where is he going to be mentally? Is he ever going to be the guy? I do look at this team as being a contention. The biggest statement is you look at that's a really good draft class for them. They have ideally what the Bears would like to have, and having these 5 picks in the first 3 rounds. So if they do this correctly, they are set up to be competing for the division title for a nice long run if Goff can keep it up. My belief is he can't.
Yeah, but I agree there, Cars. Because I mean, let's just say corner is they want corner. Everybody's tied them to Devon Witherspoon. You can see the temperament where he fits that culture. I understand it, but like you said, let's just say CJ Stroud fell. I'm sprinting to the podium with that because I feel like if I want to go corner, I can go Deontay Banks or Joey Porter or somebody like that.
There's not enough of a drop off to me in those corners. Like even Gonzalez, who everybody seems to say is the best. Like, yeah, he's got a lot of positives, but what differentiates him so much to go top 10 versus a Banks versus some of these other guys? I just don't. It's my same frustration with Jalen Carter. We talk so much about these flashes. Look at this play. Look at this play. Okay, look at the 6 to 10 plays around the one that you're highlighting. What's different among those than against these other guys? I'm 100% with you. I wouldn't do it, but this is Detroit, and who knows what it will be.
So real quick, while you brought him up, before we move on to the next one, let's just have that talk real quick about the biggest enigma in this draft tonight in Jalen Carter. I know Mike Greenberg sent out a tweet last night saying everybody that he's talking to is tying Jalen Carter to Chicago at 9. Then we see Zierlein mock having Philly trading up 1 spot ahead of Chicago. You, Phil, myself, I know Ivan talked about it. We're all on record saying that the juice isn't worth the squeeze. There, you can see, I think the kid's getting overrated just based on tape, even without the red flags.
Well, I think he's getting overrated because once you get past him,
there's nothing.
There's nothing.
Well, I don't want to say nothing, but there's
you're having to convince yourself. If you look when we started to do this, right? Brian Brzee was considered a top 10 pick. Now he's a back 3rd pick. Kalijah Kancey for a quick while was considered for some in the top 10. And then all of a sudden, everybody took a better look at all of his flaws and his size. It doesn't mean that he won't be a good player, but he is historically short or small.
Oh, yeah.
When you look at, so once you get past Jalen, he is somewhat inflated because he is probably the only true disruptor 3 technique in this draft. And so that has vaulted him up. But when you look at Carter, when you emphasize hits all the time, right? Intensity, intangibles that they're going to play hard.
It just doesn't line
down
up.
It's just not who he is. My biggest statement that I always make, if I look in my lifetime of some of the biggest question mark guys when you come to motor, You're talking about Jadeveon Clowney. You're talking about Malik McDowell, Robert Nkemdiche. We're talking about Albert Hainsworth, who is the most likely comp to Jalen Carter that you will find. The issue is none of those guys developed the motor that they were missing in the pros. It just doesn't happen.
It never happens.
Especially if you go top 10, because now your play style has been justified. It's like, look at where it was that I got drafted. If I use the Albert Hainsworth thing, you have to remember back then, as a team, you were not limited. So Albert Hainsworth got a 6-year deal. When did he have his first really good year? Year 6. They franchise tagged him. He played year 7 on the franchise tag. What did he do? Had an even better year. And he took that and went to play for Washington with the most ridiculous contract ever at the time. And he was out of the league a year and a half later.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I will be. Listen, if they get there to number 9 tonight, Jalen Carter is on the board, and with the 9th pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select defensive tackle Jalen Carter. It is what it is, but that bullseye that is already on Ryan Pohl's forehead is now twice the size and in red neon. And I don't understand, Cars. Your point is 100% valid when it's all about hits. It's all about get your track shoes on. That you can't preach that to 52 other guys and then have your first selection where you had the first overall pick in the draft, went down to 9. Your first rounder as a general manager is to a guy that has major motivational issues and motor issues. It makes no sense to me.
Phil isn't here, so this is a safe space. But look at the guy currently on the roster that they're dealing with this. That's Tevin Jenkins, a player that most of this team has said, you can't guarantee that he's got a spot here. I don't question Tevin Jenkins' talent and ability. I do question his desire to be here down in, down out. And I think the Bears do too. So I would understand the move because of the need. I would understand the move because of the talent, but I would not like the move because we're already dealing with one of those guys. And I don't think that guy is going to be on the team at the end of this year. And so now you would just do that with another person with all those red flags. It just seems like misplaced trust that when a coach is like, no, I know 15 other head coaches can't get to this guy. And I'm going to be the one. It's the biggest coach issue of all time, as always, right? I know the other guys couldn't do it, but I'll reach him where no one else could. I'm not making that bet.
Yeah, and I know Bruce, it's not based on the based on the tape with Tevin. It's the questions have been everything but the tape. It's been away.
It's been Phil's favorite statement, right? The best ability is availability.
Yeah,
which I know which is a very true statement to mock that. But Tevin Jenkins' biggest issue is availability.
He hasn't played enough football in the pros. Yep. That's why we talked about it when Alex Shapiro was on. I told him that I didn't have Tevin Jenkins written down in ink, and he's like, "What?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "How can you? You put him in pencil and you move forward with it."
Absolutely. Moving on, the Raiders, right? They have 2 core players and a lot of question marks. And in their division, they've got 2 of the top 10 quarterbacks overall. I feel that this is another team that's going to be competing number 1. They do have, it's misleading. They've got a lot of picks, but they've got a lot of picks in that no man's land. Once you get to about 100 on, this is such a nightmare solution because these guys, if you have 10 picks and 8 of them are in the back third, that's just not a good sign. You look at their needs, it is everywhere. 100% this team should be in a tank for Caleb, because if you've got Mahomes and Herbert here, you need to go up. They're the 6th oldest team in the NFL. Bad and old is where we were last year. So I want everyone to remember that. Bad and old is a recipe for disaster this year.
Yeah, and they have, I mean, not that he's not a fantastic player, but Devontae Adams resetting the market at wide receiver and is 31 years old. Yeah, it's not a great place to be in terms of roster construction, that's for sure.
And last but not least, the other team that's the hardest to predict is the Atlanta Falcons. You look at who the core guys were. Pitts had a really bad year because they just couldn't figure out a way to get to the ball. Obviously, Jesse Bates is a guy they just signed. Lindstrom is a guy that they gave a really massive extension to. Interdivision QBs. Again, this is why I would worry about I would take a shot at the QBs, because they're not good other than potentially Bryce Young. Because Ryan Pace is there, I still look at the 3+ years for a playoff outlook, because that roster is old and bad again, right? You're going to notice that commitment. So I say this should be a QB spot, as I don't know how they continue to trot out Ritter, but this is a team that I see as being a 3-4 win team, just based on the overall talent of the roster as they have.
Yeah, and I talked about it last night. D. Orlando Ledbetter, who covers the Falcons for The Athletic, he's locked in pretty good down there in Atlanta. He talked about Atlanta is fixated on BPA. They don't care about value. It's all about the best player available. That's why they drafted a tight end at number 4.
Which is just asinine.
Yeah, when you look back on totally agree, Cars. And this is why he has maintained. He said if Jalen Carter was available to Atlanta, nobody would know Jalen Carter better than the Atlanta Falcons. And he said the number one reason isn't just because of the accident and the tragic event that happened on the night of the national championship game. He said they couldn't even get Jalen Carter to practice during the week.
Yeah.
With the NIL money that's involved and stuff like that, and saying that he didn't want to, take a chance of getting hurt in practice and screw up his financial future, in the NFL and stuff like that. That was his number one reason that he said that they will not take him. And he was full steam ahead on them taking Bijan at number 8.
It makes a lot of sense from an Atlanta perspective, because one of the things that you've read continually from multiple different people, and it was in the Go Long article by one of the Packer beat writers, is you couldn't find a Georgia coach to sing the praises of Jalen Carter. Yeah. That has to carry some weight. And to using the example of not willing to practice, when you see all of these things that happen as a team, you add a guy to your roster that has that as a history. Yep. Everyone else is going to be on notice as to the way that you treat him. Are you going to push him the same way? I don't doubt that Flus would push him harder, but there is no guarantee that when you push him hard that he doesn't shut down. I know it's going back to Tevin, right? They tried to do that early, and then he's just doing sled work, and then he's gone, right?
I always go back to Tevin's college coach coming out and saying that you have to use different forms to motivate this kid. And one of the things that he used with Tevin Jenkins, he said, out of all these guys in this locker room, there's one guy here that can make $40 million, and that's you. If you're motivated and do what you're supposed to do every day. And to me, that matters. Tom Thayer, I go back to this. I shared it on a different show. When the Bears had their bye week, they asked Tom Thayer live on air what he was most focused on and what he wanted to see during the Bears bye week. And I'm like thinking he's going to talk about Justin Fields and, getting healthy and stuff like that, different things. His number one thing was, I want to see Tevin Jenkins come into the facility and show me that football matters to him.
Yeah.
That's a Bears play-by-play guy that has an office there.
Who
That's
gets it?
around these guys every day. Comes out and says that about a play. That's a pretty big deal.
It's
And it's
massive.
taking you, yes. And to bring another guy like that into it, and I don't think that the Bears, if he goes to Philadelphia, like I said, there's more of a structure there. There's
You
Fletcher
can
Cox,
take
there's
that
teammates.
swing.
Yes, I
You're
understand it.
closer. You can
Here,
take that swing.
yeah. And it's just it's a massive gamble. Yeah, 40 million is going to matter to anybody, Travis. That's the point. But it can't be the only thing that is going to when you're as talented as Tevin Jenkins, when you're as talented as Eddie Goldman, your talent is going to get you there, but you're never going to live up to the ability that you have if you don't need it, if you don't love it. Tevin Jenkins has every ability to be one of the very best offensive linemen in all of football. Maybe he's figured it out. I know he's come out and talked positive and said that he's really enjoying the camaraderie with the new teammates and them going out. Maybe it took him a little bit longer to settle in to the bright lights, big city of Chicago, because he wasn't ever used to that. Who knows? Everybody's different.
Every report we've heard is he's a different dude. That's not a slight, right? Like Shane and I are completely different individuals, and we can get along fine. The three of us, Phil, Shane, and I, other than our passion for Bears, are really, really different people. It doesn't mean that it's an insult. It's just who it is. But in the end, if the 40 million is what motivates you, and it's not your desire to be the best, it's not the desire to go out, what that means is I'm going to get my guaranteed money, and then I'm going to stop working. That's what we've seen time and time again in the NFL.
Absolutely. So we've talked about Jalen Carter enough. I mean, what is it? 1:20 after 1. So we'll know in a few more hours if that's the direction they go. And if that's the direction we go, there's nothing we can do about it. And we will hold Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren and Matt Eberflus accountable and get our points crossed. But at the same time, if they make that if they make that pick, I am not going to badmouth Jalen Carter. It's not his fault the Bears pick him.
Nope.
Tonight.
You're absolutely right.
And I want him to perform. I want him to live up to his ability. But man, that, like I said, that bullseye, if that's the move that they make, if this is the first big move that they make under the presidency of Kevin Warren, because he's a part of this.
Absolutely.
All of these guys have big red bullseyes on their forehead.
And it's going to be one of those ones you're going to find early on. The reports out of camp will become quick.
Yep.
I mean, and that's what you know.
Yep. So
just real quick, the last thing I'm going to do, the way I see the first 9 picks going, and this will be before we go through a simulator, but the way that I'm looking at the first 9 is this. This is the way that, as of kind of 11:30 last night, that I was looking at it. A few different things that you'll call out. The only reason I have Will Levis going number 2 overall is because if John McClain says that that's the way that the Texans are going, he tends to be pretty plugged in and right.
And then somebody said he went on the score and said that he thinks that they'll take Will Anderson. So I don't know if he's trying. I don't know. I didn't hear it, so I don't know if that's true, but I don't know.
It's crazy. The other thing that you'll show in here is leveraging again with Atlanta. So I have Houston drafting their quarterback early, but I do see a little bit of a fall potentially for Tyree Wilson because of a little bit of concern over the foot stuff. So I look at Houston looking at this draft a little differently. Instead of going out and getting Will Anderson, I know there's been a lot of reports that they liked Tyree more at certain points. So now you have the ability to get a quarterback 2nd overall and then still trade up and get your edge rusher early on. The other thing that you see is I have the Colts in this scenario who are supposedly infatuated with Will Levis. If he's there, I don't see them going Stroud. I would see them looking at Anthony Richardson, who has more of the mobility factor. And at this point, you're betting on massive upside for him, which I think he has more of than anyone. He's one of those guys that has super low floor, but crazy high ceiling type of guys. It worked for Buffalo with Josh Allen, so maybe you go sit down and take a chance to do that. So I have the Bears looking at Darnell Wright at this point. I think, there's a lot to like with Darnell Wright when you watch his tape. The thing that I like the most about him is he had his struggles early on, but everything seemed to finally click. I believe he's a full 4-year starter, if I'm remembering correctly. So it took him a little bit longer. He was a 5-star prospect that sat down and committed to Tennessee. But I look at him and saying, that's the guy that would make the most amount of sense.
Yeah, and at one point you were seeing him firmly entrenched, and that's the thing when most people that are running the mock simulators, you get to a certain point and you're like, well, the 55 other times I ran this simulator, I got this guy 40 picks later, so I'm not going to take him here. And that's the NFL draft is a different beast. It
destroys simulators.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think you're going to see some of that, and that's what makes it exciting. And I think you'll see. I think you're going to see some of that tonight. But could I see Darnell Wright at number 9? I do 100%, absolutely. And it's going to be interesting because under your. So what did you have here? Yeah. So under your scenario cards, they have all the offensive linemen available to them.
Yes.
And in that scenario, I think that opens up the coffers for a trade also with teams.
Tennessee would be in play there for a CJ Stroud. I think if you look at, surprisingly, Washington is all aboard with Howell, so that's not an option right now. But Tennessee makes sense there. Pittsburgh makes sense there if they're going to move up for one of the offensive linemen. So it does get very interesting. The other pick that I'm honestly looking for the most is pick 12 with the Texans, because in the instance that they don't trade down, the gut is really, if you want to get the best wide receiver, you've got to get a pick ahead of the Green Bay Packers. Yep. And the Texans would very likely be willing to move down to do that. So if you're looking at teams like, again, Patriots may be interested in that as a guy. The Ravens could definitely be interested. The Giants are a team that I really have flagged as potentially moving up to try to go get the JSN, because their playmakers, after spending all that money foolishly on Daniel Jones, are trash. JSN would make a lot of sense there. So there's so many moving parts and pieces to this right now that I find it super fascinating.
Yeah. So you want to throw your
let's do it.
Give the folks what they're craving here, Cars. Throw up the simulator and let's have a little fun. So you're just gonna do everything after we're just gonna do 1 through 4, the top 4 rounds. After that, it just gets a little bit. Obviously, all of this is pure speculation, but this will give you a pretty good idea of where things potentially could go. But
so we're going to leverage more of the public stuff, right? Because I think there's been so many changes. So I'm going to move it just ever so slightly. But everything else I think is pretty much spot on. So we'll go ahead and enter. And again, there's no chance here for the Bears to move up. So I'm interested in this because every time you see this run, it gets a little different. I think Bryce is the most certain thing, even after those rumors after Will going early. But this for us is a dream scenario. When you look at 4 quarterbacks going in the first 7 picks, This means that everyone is available that we would really want from an offensive line. This is a point to Shane that you mentioned that you would look to trade back with. But in the instance of here, where the only teams that are truly interested are in the 20s, that is probably a step far too back, because you're talking about in the next 12 picks that easily all 4 of those offensive linemen, to me, would go. And I don't know how you feel about that, Shane, but
Yeah, what are the 5 teams that are offering you the trades? It's the Chargers and
Chargers, Ravens, Cowboys, Saints, and Cardinals.
okay. Where is that listed? Why am I not seeing it?
Because you got to go to trade player. So it's if you
okay.
click the trade portion, the teams that are interested show up, and then everybody else.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, the only way that I'm making a trade down into the 20s is I'm getting a 2024 first round pick.
Oh,
back,
absolutely.
and it's going to be from so, if there was a team like Tampa, that a team that I think is going to take a complete nosedive, where that would be a premium pick next year. But
New Orleans, if their pick was a little higher, would make a lot of sense, because they've got Denver's round 2, and I don't think Denver's going to be there. But
going back to 29
this far,
is tough.
Yeah, this, when you look at it, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yep.
If I look at the guys available, I do think Skoronski's in play as a guard. One of the things I'll say to you is, if the Bears do draft Skoronski before the draft is over, I would expect Tevin Jenkins to be moved, because I think that becomes your starting left guard kind of from the second that he walked in.
Do you think that they would try him at tackle first?
I don't.
Think you don't think that they would?
No, I think that they'd look at him and be like, Zach Martin, 2.0, and let's go.
I am not going to like that pick at all. I think everybody has fallen in love with Skoronski. A lot of the people, a lot of the media, a lot of which that have went to Northwestern. Phil and I looked at a bunch of tape on him separately and together, and I see footwork. Yes, I get it. I don't see the huge separation where they're saying, oh, he's clearly the best offensive lineman in this draft. I just don't see that. And I got to be honest, I would be very disappointed if the Bears had what's available to them right now and they stayed and Skoronski was the pick. Because I look at I think your guy, Darnell Wright, Cars, he's a killer.
Yeah.
I don't see that in Skoronski at any point. But people continue to say that that's the mentality that he plays with. I see a guy that struggles with power. I see a guy that's literally almost bent in half sometimes. Is that going to get easier for him in the NFL? I don't think so.
And I look at that, especially at him. I would not even look at him at a left tackle, right? I would look at him solely as a right, even though in today's NFL, that's a little bit differently, right? Like a left and a right tackle are pretty much interchangeable. It's not the old day about worrying so much about blind sides. So that's my reason. I don't like his footwork on the edge. I like it as an interior place, but he is missing that. When we talk about it, Shane, this is the most likely trade that we would see for Pittsburgh, I think, is being in this place, because they desperately need offensive linemen. I'm not going to sit down and force it.
Yeah.
But when you look at the way that this draft board has gone, I'm not, at this point, I'm still looking Darnell Wright or Paris the most.
Yep. I know, and I know I'm much higher on Lucas Van Ness than probably anybody. I would have him in there also. Yep. Was Pittsburgh one of the teams that offered you the trade?
No, I was gonna see if I could try to force one. I mean, I would have to force it through, which I may just go ahead and do anyway, because I could make my own rules.
So the 17 and 49 or the 17 and 32 with what's available. Do you think that that's something that Pittsburgh would? Because what are they? I mean, Devon Witherspoon is still on there for them too, so they can get potentially who they have number one on their corner list or the best offensive tackle available.
They would really need offensive linemen. I mean, if you're
Yep.
going to give Kenny Pickett any sort of shot this year, you've got to do something. It'll help Najee as well. So I'm it's my own show. We're going to just force this trade through and everyone's just going to have to deal with it. But this is to me kind of like a likely scenario of where they're going to go. So let's look at what's happened in the middle,
Yep.
right? So Paris, which I think, kudos to PFF. I think that would absolutely be the move that would happen there for them to get their left tackle. Witherspoon at Philly does actually make some bit of sense.
Oh yeah, 100% it does.
Jackson does make a tremendous amount of sense there for Tennessee to go with what they've got. So the way that this is all flown makes it very easy for me. If you look at trades, 28 moves you too far back, I still feel like. So
yeah, it's pretty easy now who you're taking.
I mean, it's night and day. I'm looking at Darnell Wright and not looking back. And so as we get to this point, this is where I think, Shane, it gets really intriguing to me. So the way this works, we now have 49, 53, 61, and 64.
Yep.
At this point, you've got a ton of different players. I think Stevenson is in Miami is absolutely in play at this point for the value that he would give.
Ben connected to the Bears multiple
times.
Yep. And who's available at edge?
Thule, I don't know that BJ is a guy that would make a lot of sense for us.
I would be all over Foskey. I'm a Foskey fan. I know some people have him all over the map. And what do they have for? I would check out defensive tackle also, see what they have.
So Benton is another guy that I think the Bears.
I don't know how you feel about him, Cars, but to me, I would be pulling the trigger on Foskey. I'm a fan, but like I said, this is not my draft.
No.
I'm just giving you my.
No, that's absolutely one that makes a lot of sense. Benton to me is another.
Yep.
The other portion that I look on interior offensive line, I still think is very much in play. Because the way that this is flown, and let's see where they had did Schmitz go? So they don't have Schmitz having gone yet. Oh, yes, they did.
Yeah.
So he went at 47. So the way that I view this is this to me looks like a Tippmann position early on. So again, to solidify those, I think you are not far off on Foskey either. I think Foskey is another player.
He's gonna. Well, he to me, when you hear Eberflus talk about hits and talk about the length and talk about the athleticism that he covets,
that's a guy.
Foskey is that guy. But I know the Bears are connected with Tippmann. I know Phil is a huge Cody Mock guy that can bring you versatility at any. I mean, offensive tackle, offensive guard, and center.
He's a very intriguing guy as well, and he's definitely that lunch pail type of guy, right? Where you know that he's going to put in the work. I also don't think that Laporta would be necessarily a stretch because he is a different use case here. To me, it's more of a not as so much of a need pick, but I do think that if the draft fell this way, Laporta would absolutely be on the draft board for them as a player.
I just think, I know Ben brought it up. I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that right now the Bears' starting defensive ends are Robinson and Gibson.
Yep.
And that's a big problem.
Question. Yep.
So essentially what I'm looking at, so say if you went like Tippmann or Mock here,
You've got
I would
4
roll the
picks.
dice. I would roll the dice that you could probably get Foskey or Ojulari at 53.
That's the way and that's exactly the way that I'm looking at it.
Then you're praying at 64. Or wait, 61 would be your next pick that you can pick up Benton.
Yep. I completely agree with that. So in this one, I like Tippmann better than I like the kid from Ohio State.
Yeah.
He just, to me, makes the most amount of sense. So that's the way we're going to go there. And in a way, it makes sense. Cody goes that next place. I think this is absolutely in the range where you're looking at Foskey. And that, to me, he fits more than BJ. Herbig is an interesting kind of guy, but to me, this makes sense to go grab Foskey here and help on that rotation.
What are just run to the defensive tackles real quick and see. I know Benton hasn't went, but see. So now, he's the top guy clearly there. So now I can change the argument here that the way that this is set up, I may pull the trigger on Benton here because I still have Ojulari and Foskey available. But like I said, I'm throwing info out there.
If you look at the way how they would weight it, I mean, Benton is your 3 tech, right, at that point, which is the premium position.
Yep.
So I guess that makes sense in the regards of, the way the Bears will look at building the defense. If I have a choice between a 3 technique or an edge, I'm going to go draft the 3 tech. That's the part that really makes my defense go. So that does prioritize that quite a bit more. When you look at coming at the rest of the defensive linemen guys, you know how I love Siaka, but he's not a 3 tech, right? He's
Totally
Zach
agree.
Pickens is a guy later on that I think you take a flyer on. And I know the Bears have met multiple times with Gervin Dexter, but
according to Adam, well, that's another motivational issue there with Dexter. But according to Adam Johns, the Bears are extremely intrigued by Dexter.
Yes, I agree. But I think you've reminded me again about Benton and 3 tech because he plays that position. And to me,
it's the key to the entire defense.
It's you've now kind of done through the trenches. So let's go through and do it. So Foskey goes, of course, the pick right before us.
But welcome to the NFL draft. But I mean, I'm not unhappy with Ojulari here at all.
No, absolutely not. And I worry about him a little bit because to me he strikes more as a 3-4 guy. But I think when you look at value as to where he is,
and the Bears have been involved with Hall also.
Yeah,
but I would be on Ojulari ahead of him.
And if I look, so we've done. Let's just see everybody again. Dell, I don't think is a play. I'm not as big as DJ Turner as a lot of folks are.
Right.
The way you look at this,
Cars, go to the running backs. I just want to see how they fell. Okay, that's pretty much what you would expect here.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, it makes a tremendous amount of sense. So I think if you look at kind of edge here, the guy that makes the most sense is BJ for us. And now you get to kind of that interesting part here. This will be a place that I think trade downs are absolutely viable. But what you're going to be looking at, like Tennessee here doesn't make sense because they don't offer you anything additional for 70 picks. If you look at Atlanta, you could potentially talk yourself into that because of 75. LA, you move down too much. Giants. So the only one of these that I look at make the most amount of sense to me would be the Falcons. But even then, that's a significant fall off.
It is. And I mean, let's be honest, you can use another corner. You can definitely use another edge.
Yep.
Easily.
But here, like, I look at this, I'm probably higher a little bit on Hodges Tomlinson than a lot are because I think he kind of fits
Yeah.
fits
And
a mold.
he wants to go by Trey Tomlinson now. They
Oh,
announced the other day.
all right. So we got a name change
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
that works. I don't know how
Well,
you feel about Zach, but I'm not a big Zach guy.
we talked about him a lot last night. Eric Kramer is a huge fan of Charbonnet. To me, I have clearly Bijan number one, far and away, followed up by Jahmyr Gibbs. And I know people don't agree with me, but if Jahmyr Gibbs was on the board, I don't think he will sniff 53. I would have a big problem passing on Jahmyr Gibbs
If he's there, you're picking
if
him.
he was available. Let's this nickel corner spot, Cars, where you're talking about your guy there. When you're talking about positions of importance in an Eberflus system, that's almost next, if not next.
And that's really the way that I would look at doing this. He plays that position. He's feisty. I really like him as a prospect. I tend to like the way they got the defenders from TCU play. They're usually very aggressive, right? They're always attacking, usually because they don't have much of an offense, so they usually play an aggressive style defense. So,
and how do you feel about Harrison from Ohio State?
I'm not familiar with that kid much at all, to be honest.
Yeah, I think he fits what Flus wants, so that would be another consideration for me on the edge.
Yeah.
But no, I mean it's definitely a position of need.
I like him more. Like I said, I'm not the biggest Turner guy. I know Turner's fast, but that to me seems to be what he offers and nothing else. So if the draft were to fall this way,
yep,
Trey would be the one that we would go. So that falling that way, I'm not going to lie. If I'm looking at this and I'm sitting there at 103 and Zavala is there, I don't really care who else is on the board.
Yep.
That guy is such a mauler for me. That's a name I wouldn't. That's kind of like if Gibbs is staring you at 53, I sprint to the podium.
Yep. And well, that was, I was kind of looking at the pick that we just made. If you looked at Bergeron was still there.
Yes.
Which that's would be 100% a guy that I would
there's
have
no
a problem
way he's
passing
going
on.
to be there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Yeah.
But I guess the position that I would look at here along with Zavala is what's left at wideout.
So you've got Mims there, who I actually do like Mims.
Ooh, yeah, Hutchison's still available too.
Hutchison later on. Like, again, we've got to pick 30 later. So we do have one more pick here in the fourth. I mean, forget that Charlie Jones guy, but sorry, Phil.
Here comes a comment.
Again, if you're going to do this, if you're telling me that we come out of this and you've got most likely Braxton Jones at left tackle, I would imagine Zavala would be your left guard. You've got Tippmann at center. You've got Nate Davis at right guard, and you've got Darnell Wright at right tackle. You have really gotten young and really built the trench. And so, yes, I would love a wideout here, but I just look at this is the way to get really young at a line that's going to grow with Justin Fields. That to me makes the most amount of sense.
Yeah, and G Station 7, Mingo is not going in the later rounds, man. He's
moving up because he's one of two guys that really has size that nobody else in the draft class does.
I mean, early to mid second round is going to be, I would say, as late as he's going to go. I mean, I believe in this draft, if you scroll up, I think he went to Philly in the second round. Did he not? I think I remembered seeing him come off the board to Philly.
Look.
Because obviously Philly gets the guys that I always love.
Yeah, always. He might have gone. Yep.
Yeah, there he is right there.
Bingo.
62. Yep.
So, I mean, that's an interesting pairing. So the way I look at this again, because this team is so focused on the trenches Zavala is a steal to me at this point. So I'm running to pick him there. And then I think, yes, to your point here, now I'm really looking at playmakers at different positions. So I'm looking at wide receiver. There isn't a whole lot there. You'll look at tight end and you'll look at kind of running back as all of those places. Tucker, I know, is a guy that has been red flagged by several.
The medicals.
The medicals there. I know Keaton Mitchell is a guy that our boy Ryan Cox certainly
shitty school
certainly loves. Chase Brown is an interesting guy just because I think he's a interesting 3-down type of guy where he's not like a true starter, but he can kind of get some places.
Here's some advice for you, Cars.
Draft a small school like Arkansas. Ooh, that's a good one. But the way I look at this is probably the place where you're ideally looking for a playmaker, but there aren't a whole lot there to go on. So I'm not sure. Like, if I look at this list, I'm not a big Kobe Turner guy. Anthony Johnson, I do like a little bit, but I don't know how he fits.
It's hard to draft a linebacker here, but I love Ivan Pace. But
I mean, there's just Scruggs is another guy I think that later.
I mean, if you're looking at Abanaconda, I mean, in terms of being a playmaker, he would be that dude. I mean, he's explosive as hell. But
that's a different skill set, right?
Yep,
when this draft hits, he's got more speed than like Deuce Vaughn has some good speed, but his size terrifies me.
I couldn't do it.
So
if you just break it down in the wide receivers, I just want to look at them by themselves.
Because you look at
so the Bears have been connected to Wicks, but I couldn't pull the trigger.
I'm not a big and you just look like it is sort of a mess.
Yeah, it's barren
everywhere else. So
wow, they're very high on Yeshovis from Princeton, huh? Jesus, they're talking about him going Friday night, and they have him at 281. Wow.
I don't. That's why I always love these, because I think it's just always a mix. But I think go for a trade here.
Or what about? I know we drafted one already, but is there any value at corner that's left on there? Because that's not
like it. Yeah. But that's kind of the reason that Zavala fell, because there was a run on corners early because everybody got thirsty. Is there anybody else on the defensive line that strikes out?
Did the kid from Ohio State go the edge? Harrison? I'm sure he must have.
Yeah, it looks like it. Yep. Oh, Valami's an interesting guy there.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. Yeah. And down there, I know he's down the list, but Ali Gay is another guy that I'm definitely interested in from LSU.
So because I'm going to do Valami just from the sense of we still need more rushers. He's an interesting guy to add to the room. He'd be part of your rotation, which is more than I think, if I do a running back, it'd be a spare rotation where this person you're still probably talking about 15, 20% of the snaps, every game. So Valami would be that pick. And that's basically the way the Cars mock has worked. So B+ from PFF, I will take, because that means it's an A in any normal world.
So Darnell Wright, Joe Tippmann, Keanu Benton, BJ Ojulari, Trey Tomlinson, Chandler Zavala, and Valami Fehoko. So Eric Kramer went trenches deep last night, and his idol, or your idol last night, I guess, went trenches deep, and you followed suit today, Cars.
I mean, I look at this again as just that needs to be the focus. That's where we're the weakest. That does seem to be where there's a lot of good depth. And key to me was definitely, the trade down. If I add that second rounder and can still, or that, excuse me, third second rounder, and I can still get a Wright or a Jones or somewhere along those lines, that to me is the win. In the end,
No,
you saw that I mocked Darnell Wright to 9 because I think he's in play. But if you're telling me that I can go grab 4 rotational guys, starter / rotational guys with my first 4 picks, that's a massive win. And you get your
yeah. So
nickel.
what you just did is the guy that you're originally going to take at 9, you got at 17 along with Tipman.
Yep.
So
And that's a home run.
yep,
So
that is the game that you have to play in the NFL draft.
yeah. So
you have an unruly listener here.
God, where's that mute button again? What do I do here? But no, I mean that's again, I think this draft, regardless of whether it goes offensive line or defensive line first, both are really in play.
Yep.
I just don't see a way that we're going to be drafting outside of the trenches because value and talent versus pick mesh the most. So that's where the Bears are very lucky in this draft. Where they need it the most is where there's some of the best depth. But if you're telling me like I can get Benton, Tippmann, and Wright, I've now 3 starters, 3 picks. And technically with my 5th pick, I'm adding my starting nickel. So that's the way I'm looking at it. And let's hope we can get something similar.
Let's just hope we can put all these fucking mock drafts to rest. I don't know if I'm more excited about the NFL draft being tonight or more excited that we can just move off of the first round mocks. I know it's going to be fun tomorrow. I know Phil and I are going live tomorrow right around this time before the draft to talk about day 2. And then we'll have our, best available, but it'll paint a clearer picture for us moving forward once we see how it unfolded. And
I can't,
like you said,
I need to get through it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm just saying, let's just say our nightmare comes true and they pull the trigger on Carter at 9. Boy, you're pigeonholed at 53 with really where you have to go.
Yeah.
Essentially. I mean,
there's not as much flexibility once you get past Carter. And then to me, I think Van Ness is more of a 3 tech down the line. And once you get past Cansey and then Benton, your 3 techs are done. But those guys should be there later.
Yeah.
To me, the bigger fall off is once you get past Wright, Jones, Johnson, and I'm with you on Skoronski, but I know that that's how the league views him for whatever reason.
Well, and that's what they're telling everybody also. You know what I mean? That's what's out there publicly. I haven't seen anything I have not seen one rep where I'm like,
wow,
holy shit. Yeah, I see it. Love his footwork. Totally agree there. And I get it. That's a big part of it. Other than that, I don't see a physically dominant guy that's just going to come into the league. And, I 100% disagree when I know Courtney Cronin said it. Adam Hogue said it. Cleanest offensive lineman there is. Clearly the best offensive lineman available. Adam Hogue even pushed it a whole nother level and said that he is almost flawless on tape. And I'm like,
that's too much Northwestern love. But the fallout from those guys, my next guy is Harrison. But to me, there's a big fallout between those 4 to Harrison. And Harrison's going to go within 10 picks of the last one, right? Like he's guaranteed first round. Once you get past Harrison, I hate that class even more. Like I love Cody Mouch, but I don't think he's a tackle this day and age. So to me, the reason I'm so emphasizing offensive line is I could still see myself with a good interior defensive line guy in round 2. it's to me so much more of a stretch for an offensive lineman that I love at 53 comparatively.
I see it, man. We're almost at the 90-minute mark, so if you're good to go, I say we
end it. Thanks,
wrap
everybody.
it up there. I know I have to order some food for tonight for the family because I'm not going to be around, and go take care of that. And I got to go pick up my son and wake up my daughter here in the next few minutes and head out. So, hey, we love all you guys for showing up
so much
in the afternoon.
You.
Don't forget this tonight, round 1. You're going to see me there. You're going to see DDP. Cars is going to be there. Coach O popping in. Ivan Vargas will be there. You get to see it live. Maybe we'll shock the world and we'll get another Cars TTNL moment when he throws his hands up in the air. Maybe we'll see him rip his new TV in the office off the wall when they take Jalen Carter.
It's not mounted to the wall for that very reason right now. I've got it sitting on a desk so I can more possibly just grab it and throw it and not do as much damage.
Perfect. So 7:30 p.m. East tonight, guys, round 1. You're not going to find better coverage than you get here at TTNL Network. So this is Cars Keys Season 1, Episode 22. Signing off. Cars.
Later.
What's it going to be? What's your gut? Give
Darnell Wright. Darnell Wright is my gut at 9. Not even in a trade down. Straight up at 9.
We are out of here, guys. We'll talk to you later. See you tonight. Let's go. Go Bears.